Hello, Royalers. It's Lady T. Welcome to Royal Black and Elite. And today's episode is going to be wonderful. I had to take a week off. We had a death in the family. Thank you all for your well wishes. And I'm so glad to be back to join you. I'm Lady TrenettWilson, social historian and lecturer. And I am so excited to announce the launch of my virtual Black History Lecture Tour. I'll be all over on videos at a video center near you. So if you have a program or you have an audience that you'd like to share some great Royal Black and Elite history with, give us a call. Colette Martin is the woman you need to talk to, and you can email me at ladyt@urbangirls, that's with a Z.org. Now let's get into today's show. By the way, thank you for all the likes, shares, and subscribe. The channel continues to grow, and it's because of you. Thank you for your comments. It's getting to the algorithm. Tell me what you want to learn about as we launch an episode each week. All right, let's get into it. Today we're going to learn about a man. He was synonymous with luxury, comfort, and jaw-dropping elegance as a hotel owner and restaurateur in the 1800s. His name is James Wormley, and he was the owner of the Wormley Hotel, a five-star hotel in Washington, D.C. that TripAdvisor will surely given a 10. Often confused with being the first FBI agent, James Wormley was a wealthy businessman who owned the Wormley Hotel in Washington, D.C. Some say he was the first CIA agent, so that's all still smoke and mirrors, but his story is very interesting because the hotel he had, it originally was called the Wormley House. And when it launched and everything, it became the Wormley Hotel. But it was one of the most beautiful and preeminent hotels of its time in Washington, D.C. It was nestled right in the middle of all of Washington's elite. And the Wormley became the site of one of the nation's most consequential elections that secured Jim Crow for the next 100 years. Of course, without the owner's knowledge, reportedly. Now, James was born pretty much into wealth, even though at the time when he was born, his family was just becoming wealthy. They had always lived in wealth and around wealth because of his mixed race background. So his family was not enslaved, and they moved from Virginia, where they had lived with a wealthy family, to Washington, D.C. in 1814. James was one of 10 children, and he was born to Lynch, Perry Lee, and Mary Wormley. Now, the Wormleys were a family before their time, as Lynch owned a hackney carriage service, and he transported some of the nation's elite. He purchased the company for $175, almost lost it twice. In fact, he did lose it a few times. He went to jail a few times for debt. So Lynch really went out there and taught his children, his family, how to take those knocks in business and keep going. And he really didn't get in trouble. When he did get in trouble, he was able to get out of it because of his white patrons. They were known for their excellent customer service. And James, Lynch had taught all the kids how to do that carriage service. But James, he excelled. He really, really did well, and he was able to purchase his own hackney service. And he was smart because when he placed, where he was going to be, he went right to the center of where all the political elites would be. And he would transport them to two really big hotels at the time. One was called the National, and it was really ritzy. It had balls and things like that. So James was hobnobbing with these people, as well as the Willard. And look at the interior of these beautiful hotels. This was restored in the 1980s. So if you're ever in that area, make sure you go down to the National and the Willard. Now, of course, his business exploded, and he did very well. He was meeting a lot of business people and politicians. And in 1841, he married Anna Thompson, who was also from Virginia and who would become his business partner. He had the restaurant and she had the candy store. So they did business together and they had 4 children: William, James, Garrett, and Anna. And we have no pictures of his wife. We do have a picture of Anna, and actually James, the oldest son, he took over the business after his father passed, but he became the first graduate of the School of Pharmacy at Howard University. So his children did well as well. So with a booming Hackney business and a growing family, Wormley needed more money. So he went to California to prospect for gold, eventually ending up being working on a Mississippi steamboat. And that's where he really learned all of his skills: customer service, how to provide luxury. And it really helped him in his business later on, because when he returned back to Washington, D.C., he was able to land a job at the Metropolitan Club. Now, the Metropolitan Club was a famous private club where all of the highest level politicians and business owners went. And that's where he learned his trade. And that's also where he met Senator Reverdy Johnson. And he was getting ready to be appointed as an ambassador to England. So he invited Wormley to go with them. And that is where his training went to another level. Training in the top kitchens in Paris. And he became known best for his turtle soup. Turtle soup was a thing back then. So he was known for that. And when he returned back to Washington, D.C., he opened up his first hotel and his first property. He had the hotel and his wife had the candy shop. And to give you an idea, look at the hotels back in the 1800s. The Hotel Robinson was a very famous one. But compared to those lower end hotels, he really wanted the grandeur and the splendor. And so he kept on working, and his interior of his hotels rivaled some of the most beautiful hotels in the country. So this is an example of perhaps what his hotel looked like inside, as far as just the luxury of it. We don't have a picture of what it looked like on the inside, but we see that his business did grow. And when he was finally able to save money from his catering, not to mention he had a lot of white patrons who gave him money because they loved his food, they loved his company, his customer service. So he bought his other hotel, which he became famous for, called the Wormley Hotel in Washington, D.C., not far from the White House. Now, this is where Wormley training really shined. All he had learned in England, he brought it back with him. The customer service was second to none, and it was actually up to date. I mean, it had an elevator, a telephone, beautiful rooms. It had a barber shop. It had 150 of the most elegant rooms in the city, and many of the businessmen and politicians met there. The Wormley Hotel was the first integrated hotel in Washington, D.C. And so James also greeted Haitian minister and noted African scholar Edward Wilmot Blyden. Blacks and whites slept in the same rooms and the same bed. And one very important man who slept in those beds, his name was Senator Charles Sumner. He was a Republican from Massachusetts, and he was also an abolitionist. And together they worked to open up the first school for blacks in Washington, D.C. James worked closely with him, and in 1885, Wormley Elementary School was opened in Georgetown. It remained an all-black school until 1952. Another very famous person that Wormley was reportedly linked to was President Lincoln, and it is said that he was at Lincoln's bedside upon his death. So this man was just extremely interesting. But perhaps the greatest thing and the greatest scandal that came out of the world was a secret meeting that created the Compromise of 1877. It was a tumultuous election that year, and the two candidates Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel Tyndall, they met there and they made a secret deal for the presidency that resulted in federal troops being removed from the areas of Reconstruction after the Civil War. And we all know that resulted in 100 years of Jim Crow. Now, contemporaries report that there was no evidence that Wormley knew about this horrible deal that was made on his property. So we may never know. That's why some of the rumors about him being a CIA agent and FBI agent may have come out. But there is no evidence that he knew what happened that day. Now, Wormley continued to grow and expand his hotel and expand his properties in the 1870s and the 1880s. He even held a patent on a boat safety device. After a long and very illustrious career, the restaurateur, the business owner, and the hotel owner, Mr. James Wormley, passed away on October the 18th, 1884, at 65 years old during a kidney stone operation, and he was in the hospital at Mass General Hospital in Sumner. He was surrounded by his family, and he died, in peace. Wormley was beloved in his community, and his body lay in state in the Sumner Room. In all the hotels in Washington, they flew their flags at half-mast upon his passing. Now, when he passed in 84, his wealth was worth $100,000. Today, that would be about worth $2 million. So what happened to his hotel? Well, his son took it over in the 1890s. He did a pretty good job, but in 1897, it changed ownership. And in 1906, it was replaced by Union Station. So literally this small plaque you see, and here it is a little bit bigger, is the only thing that remains of James Wormley's work in his hotel. Now, let's talk about James Wormley Jones. James Wormley Jones was the first FBI agent in the United States who was of African descent. So don't confuse him with James Wormley, the man who owned the hotel, because those are two different people. And this is even his application to show that it was James Wormley Jones. There's nothing that exists for James Wormley, the man who owned the hotel, that exists that shows that he had an application like this. So that's the difference between the two. So that's the life of James Wormley. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. I hope you learned a lot, found out about a person you never knew about, and we're putting out a whole entire luxury in black. So keep your eye out for that, because I want to show you some of the hotels and so many wonderful things that the Royal Black and Elite did throughout time in history. Thanks for watching. As always, thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing, and tuning in for another great episode of Royal Black and Elite.